Hello and welcome to All Stats Aren't We, a podcast in which Leeds fans cast their combined eye over goings on at Ellen Road, giving scrutiny to the underlying statistics and tactical footings at work at Leeds United. I'm Adam Elliott, the unpressured cross of the podcast, weak and ineffective, just like me. And I'm joined today by the unpressured shot of the podcast, just like this man, not very clever. It's Martin Riley. Martin, how are you doing?
I'm not doing too badly, thank you very much. Besides having to rewatch that. That has certainly brought my day down. Other than that, I've had a decent day. I've chilled for quite a lot of today. One of my kids was away for the weekend, staying over at a friend's house. So I had one less kid to worry about. And I've made a nice curry for tea. So, yeah, I've had a good day outside of when I had to rewatch this match. So the two moments that brought my weekend down were watching this game live and rewatching it post live.
The things we do for our listeners, man.
Well, exactly, yeah. How about you?
I mean, it's been a couple of rough weeks for me, but
yeah,
we trudge forward. If anything, I did say to a colleague of mine, like, he was just saying, like, "Oh, how are you feeling after yesterday's result?" I was like, "Yeah, I'll be all right later. I've got therapy later. I've got I've got an All Stats Aren't We podcast, and it is quite therapeutic doing these. So hopefully it helps." And I wasn't looking forward to doing it, and then we were like putting the running order together, and actually I quite like a lot of the questions. I think it's pretty good one we might have in store today. So hopefully people do appreciate that. Bloody hell, though, it's not been the best. You had a curry. I also had a curry. I had a Thai curry. Courtesy of my brother. Shout out to Daniel. He did a good job. And so that's fueled me as well. Good and proper. But yeah, goodness me. I didn't watch the full game back. I'm assuming you didn't, or you did most of it or something, but I couldn't do it. But I watched most of it.
I watched probably about 75% of it. I watched a good lot of it on ×2 speed for most of it.
I didn't do that, so I probably watched more. I've actually watched more in terms of time, but yeah, goodness me, it was not pleasant. What is it about us at Turf Moor? They turn into the worst games.
No, it's just last season and this season. It's just, it was not a great game for us.
Worst game last season, like even worse than some of the losses, because at least the losses we had some stuff to talk about. The draw at Turf Moor in the last game was awful, and this was bad for different reasons. So I'm kind of sick of Burnley, and I hope they go down, because I don't want to have to play them next season if we stay up. It's probably going to be sod's law that we'll go down together, but we can talk about that later on, I suppose. But yeah, I can't be arsed with some of these games at the moment, but we march forward with this podcast, and the hope is, I guess, if we do survive this season, which is still a distinct possibility that we might, then it's a season to build on, and next year might be a bit more fun than this. But I think this is going to be a slog, and I think we knew that coming into it, which makes it a little bit easier to stomach. But here we are. This is where we're at. There aren't any news of anything other than the injuries that I think most people know about, which are frustrating. Obviously, it sounds like what the hell did my mouth just do? Gnonto should be back for Friday after hernia surgery. I mean, I think Georgie got a hernia issue, didn't he? And he was back after about a week and a half. So Gnonto should be not far away by Friday. Might be one more game. Hopefully it's Friday, though, because we've got West Ham, and that's another big game. Okafor, 7 to 10 days per Fabrizio Romano. That was a weird one.
Just a bit, yeah.
That would mean he either just makes the game or just misses it. I happen to hope that both players make the game, for reasons we probably discussed today on this podcast. But yeah, I don't think there's anything else to talk about unless you wanted to speak about either of those. Okafor was certainly missing against Burnley for sure.
No, we'll get into that a bit later.
Good. Right, cool. Just a reminder then to everyone listening, please like, subscribe on YouTube. We should be on this. It might be Alfie this week editing this, but it doesn't make it onto YouTube. You know who to blame. The guy that dislocated his shoulder because of Pascal Strauch's goal against Sunderland. Yes, he helps at All Stats Aren't We. He's a good friend of ours. I hope he does put this out. That'd be great. But if you could like and subscribe, even if you don't want to watch on YouTube, that'd be great. And also leave us a review on Spotify, on Apple Podcasts, on any of the other podcast players that you're listening to it on. That would also be grand. But let's get into it. Let's just not beat around the bush. And we'll start off, as always, with the game summary. Both teams approached the game in a 4-3-3 shape, with Burnley opting to change their usual shape to match up with Leeds, having only played a 4-3-3 in the Cup this season. Leeds had the majority of the possession and area dominance, for the majority of the first half, but struggled to the opening spells to create anything decent in terms of chances, and it was Burnley threatening in transition and from set pieces as well. It was from a set piece that the first goal was then scored, with the throw-in from Burnley. They faked a long throw, threw it short, with the pass returning to Walker, who only had Jack Harrison in his way, and whipped in a cross, which was met by Leslie Ugochukwu, who headed the ball past Carl Darlow to score. Leeds continued to possess the ball more in the rest of the half, coming close to scoring through a chance from Brendan Aronson, which was saved by Martin Dubravka, with Burnley not having a shot for the rest of that half. And then in the second half, it was much the same, with Leeds having lots of the ball and having some half chances as well, but not being able to score. Meanwhile, Burnley scored with their only shot of the second half with an absolute rocket from distance from Loom Chauna, and the game ended 2-0, as you all know, to Scott Parker's side. Stats of note, data providers are slightly different, but it's like broadly the same. FBref had it at 2.4 XG to 0.5, and FOTMob had it at 2.63 to 0.45. That was in favour of Leeds, if anyone didn't know. We had 19 shots. Burnley only had 4, scored 2 goals. We had 4 big chances. I guess this paints a picture that we're probably going to come talk about in a second, but yeah, those are the main ones to discuss. Shall we get into the questions then, shall we? I guess, Martin, we don't want to talk too much about this game, but we will talk about it a bit. But one of the things that came up from this game was some good stuff from Dan. You called it ramblings in the Discord in this running order. I don't agree that he ever rambles. Dan is wonderful. And go find it if you are on the Discord but haven't read it. But he basically said that Leeds have looked better this season when we've gone longer and we don't play like we did last season. And as soon as we play shorter, like we did last season, like we did in this game against Burnley, we don't play well. Does what Dan says ring true to you, Martin? And is there something in it in the stats as well?
Yeah, so it did certainly ring true to me. It's something which I'd said on my Twitter as well before I'd seen Dan's comment, was basically that we have built a squad which is massive. Big Bastards FC. And as such, when we do go the opposite to what we were doing last season, we generally do quite well, because we have Calvert-Lewin who can knock the balls down, and we have other big players up in the forward areas too, like Anton Schach and Sean Longstaff as well. So we've got 3 big guys who can be in the attacking third quite often to get these long balls too. And we just didn't do it in this, and it felt like that while I was watching it. So I went through the stats, and overall the season so far, we're standing at 15.24% of our passes played long. So 15% of the time.
A lot more than last season.
Yes. Last season we were around 9%. So it's a good 6% higher than what we were last season. In fact, every single game so far this season has been a higher score, a higher amount of our passes being played long than last season. Whereas in this game, we only played 9.5% of our passes long, and that was around 60 passes in the whole game that we tried to play long. That may sound like a lot, but it really isn't. Against Bournemouth, we did 22% of our passes long. That was obviously, like Dan mentioned in his comment, forced by Bournemouth because they were aggressive in their press, which forced us to go long. So it wasn't part of our game plan. I don't think it's what Daniel Farke wants his side to do, even though it should be what we are trying to do more often. I'm not saying that we should go long as much as we did against Bournemouth, maybe a little bit less than that, because we do create some nice things with short passing, and we have done. There were some chances which were made in this game through short passing, but you need to mix things up a bit and make things more difficult for your opponent to defend, and that's what this would have done. Because by the time we was getting it into around their box, that Burnley were all set and ready to defend. And defend, they did. They did a very good job. Whenever we had any efforts inside the box, there was usually 2 men around the player who was taking the shot, which makes things very difficult to get any sort of purchase. So even though we created 4 big chances, all of those 4 big chances outside of Aronson's chance, I will say, was well under quite a big amount of pressure. And as a side note, I just want to note that I don't agree with FOTMob's definition of a big chance, because I feel it's from what I've looked at it in the past, their definition of a big chance is 0.10. And that is not a big chance. If a striker scores 10 times out of 100 from that position, that is not a big chance, but that's a side note. And yeah, so basically I agree entirely with what Dan was saying, and the stats do back it up that in this game we were particularly short in our passing style, which made things easier for Burnley to defend. And there were some great chances caused in the few moments that we did go long. There was just some good things created from those openings. And if we would have done this more frequently, especially in the first half, we did start going a little bit longer in the final 10, 15 minutes. And I wonder, I don't have the timestamps for all these passes, but I do wonder what percentage of these passes were played in the final 20 minutes after they scored. But yeah, so we just need to try to mix things up more is the ultimate thing for me. Is we can't be this predictable in possession. Scott Parker knew what we were going to do, and he had a plan in place for it. Yeah, there was some bits of fortune in this win. The long distance shot from them, absolute peach of a goal. I just want to say, lovely goal, and then the beautiful cross by Kyle Walker, which I kind of jinxed with my comments on the preview, but we know he's still got that technical quality, and it's more about his physical decline for me than anything else. But yeah, we just did
physical decline. He did burn Pascal.
I know. I was watching that particular moment on the rewatch. That Christ, Pascal. But we'll get into the lovely Pascal later in this pod.
Yeah, I mean, I think the way we've recruited, right, is you don't want to be the protagonist. And Parker, even though they were at home, he wanted us to be the protagonist with the ball. He wanted us to have the ball. We didn't have the right profiles for it. If this was the way we were going to play, I know he'd only just come back from a long trip over an international break, but Altanaka makes a lot more sense. He can at least connect things a bit better. If you're going to do this, I'm not saying I would have done it, but I'm just saying if you're going to do it, he makes more sense. He came on in the 81st, 82nd minute, something like that. So, like, even if you're not going to start him, why has he been brought on so late if that's the kind of game that you're going for? So it just didn't make any sense to me. And then a lot of the game was funneled wide because we weren't wanting to go long, so we went short. You funnel wide to Brendan Aronson, who's not really a winger, and Jack Harrison, who's a winger, but he's not the quickest and he's not the most sort of like skillful 1-versus-1 to beat a player. So a lot of his crosses are from weird angles, but it just meant we crossed the ball a lot. And I'm sure loads of people saw Johnny Cooper's start. It's the most crosses we'd played in a game for 5 years. So, yeah, it was essentially really easy for them because as soon as they had us funneled wide, because they knew that's where the ball was going to go, they were really easily set in their structure, the back four, the three in front. And it was just really easy for them to mop balls up for most of the time. I mean, Calvert-Lewin had a bit of joy with a few moments, but it was few and far between. So, yeah, I agree. It was the wrong play in terms of the tactics with the personnel on show. We do have personnel that could play that way and go, do what we were doing last season and play a bit shorter. I'm not saying I would do it, but we do have that. So that doesn't make sense to me. So either you have to go horses for courses and be a bit more adaptable game to game like that, or you just fully, as we've said on the last few podcasts, you just lean into this go more direct stuff. And you don't let the opposition. So Dan, as he mentioned, in the Bournemouth and the Newcastle games, he said that we went long and aggressive against Bournemouth because they forced us to do so from the pressing. We played more cautiously against Newcastle because we feared them, and we looked really solid as a result of that caution as well. Two of the games we looked more solid, looked better. Probably the Bournemouth game being our best game of the season. So my answer isn't actually, play the right profiles and play the way you're playing. It's actually just, Daniel Farke, you need to give your head a shake and you need to go, I'm going to go a bit longer here. It's what's worked. The game that we went the longest, the 22% against Bournemouth, was our best performance of the season. It isn't, a coincidence. It isn't chance. So that's where I'm a bit frustrated. And I'm going to continue to say that, this is what we should be leaning into for the rest of the season. It should be go long, and it should be go to counter press from there. Get your midfield too, who are really, really powerful midfielders, who are better players out of possession than they are in possession. Both of them, as much as Stacks are a more impressive player than Longstaff in possession, they're still players that want to kind of win the second and first balls in midfield, and that's the way to do it. So it should be, use Calvert-Lewin's height and his strength. He loves it. He's really up for the scrap. we're not doing it as much as we should do. So it's very, very frustrating. Dan said it's effing frustrating and so obvious. Yeah, I agree. And hopefully, he does learn more from this. Like, I'm happy with some of the changes we've made since Arsenal. I think they've been good, but we're still not doing certain things the way we should. And I know Burnley weren't going to let us do it easily. They were quite happy to sit off us and let Strauch and Rodon just kick it around at the back quite a lot of the time. Of course they were. They weren't going to press us aggressively in those situations. But then you just need to hoof it. You just need to run. You need to get bodies around Calvert-Lewin. It's quite simple. And even Brendan Aronson talked about how he's been instructed to do that, and he wasn't doing any of that in this game. He said after the Bournemouth game, he's been instructed to get close to Calvert-Lewin. Didn't see any of that, getting near him, getting around those 50-50s in those second balls. So is what it is. Rish also said that it's linked to Dan's question and point, but something about conceding first is what he wanted to talk about, and the options within Farke's wheelhouse coming back or changing things. Obviously, we're skipping ahead a little bit here because we were 1-0 down into the second half, but he said he thinks that we're either reliant on individual quality from a sub, and we don't have any that are attacking other than Perot, shooting or something, or going with the 3-1-3-2 effort formation that we've sometimes done as well, which has worked, once back in 2023, maybe a couple of draws we might have got, like the Preston one I can remember, but there aren't many times it's actually worked. But yeah, it just ended up being that Burnley could game state us and coast. So do you just think that the subs are often making us worse, and they're actually not making it better, or do you think he just needs to be more proactive when it's not working and say Tanaka might have benefited here or something like that? What do you say to what Risha said there?
We know very well what our thoughts on Daniel Farke's substitutions. It's one of the few things which we had gripes about last season, that and his refusal to play certain players at certain times. So outside of making these subs earlier, which he won't do, there's not a whole lot really to say here, Ish. You know what we think. There is some other things that he could do. He could potentially try to prevent us from conceding first and play our best box defenders. And there's one certain Slovenian international who has been performing well recently for his national team, who still hasn't started a game for us. And we paid quite a lot of money for him for a centre-back. So we should be making more use of the guy, because he will defend the box better and he will make sure. Like, I'm not saying that if he was on the pitch, they wouldn't have scored their opening goal. Maybe not. But potentially the second goal, he would have actually run out and put some pressure on the goal scorer for the second goal. I forget his name. Uchawa. Chuna. That's it. So yeah, so maybe he could have done that. But outside, these are the things which I'm not sure if Farke is going to do. Definitely won't do the making subs earlier. That's just not his thing, and it never has been his thing. Even when things aren't going well for you, his answer when we're down is to do the 3-1 effort, as we've said quite a few times. Just throw on whatever attackers he's got on the bench and just hope for the best that they whack one in, and that is his go-to to change things. Not to try to say get it a bit longer, get it up to the two big units we've got up front at this point. When he brought on the Nature and had him alongside Calvert-Lewin, I was expecting us to go longer more often.
Yeah.
You've got two guys there for the centre-backs to worry about, so they wouldn't be just picking up Calvert-Lewin like they were before. They have two players to worry about, but that didn't really happen. Most of the longer balls we was doing was to the wider areas to try to get players to run onto, and even then there wasn't very many of them from what I remember. So yeah, that's about all I can say on this one.
I do think James was a positive sub. Actually, he was one of the more positive players late in the game, but I mean, at that point it didn't matter. The game was gone. It was 2-0. Game's gone. But like, he, unlike Aronson, was willing to basically just get out his feet and whip it into the area, and he did it on quite a few occasions. They weren't all great, but some of them did kind of make something happen. So I liked that sub. That was positive, but I still don't agree with Farke's subs, and I don't think I ever will. But yeah, the other bit of Rish's question is about conceding first, and you said there, like, it's been a problem, and it has been. It is an issue for us, and it's not like we haven't been able to fight back in some games. But I don't think, Martin, that watching us fight back in games when we've gone a goal down recently has been like Oh my gosh, yeah, that's such a repeatable way of doing it. It's always felt like it's something different each time. Whether that was a kind of a ridiculous header from Calvert Lewin, or it was who was it against Bournemouth that scored before long stuff. I can't remember now. My mind's gone blank. But basically, I don't think any of the times that we've managed to equalise and fight our way back into it, even the Okafor goal against Spurs, like they haven't been the same. They haven't been the same kind of repeatable actions. So I don't think that that's great either. And our next question kind of talks about this, because we had a question from American in Leeds on Twitter who said, XG says we should be picking up better results. What's the argument against expected goals? Is it really indicative of the manager's tactics? And this is kind of leaning into what I was talking about with game state. But yeah, do you have an answer for our good friend?
Yeah, so actually, it varies so differently between different data providers. Some just pick up just the ball location and nothing else. And from wherever that ball is on the pitch, that's where they determine the XG. Other data providers pick up pressure from defenders. So that will obviously make things much more realistic and accurate. And then other data providers even go as far as to show what the goalkeeper's positioning was, to try to indicate. So if it was like a one-on-one, was the goalkeeper like right in front of the striker when he's trying to shoot it, or was he for 5 yards away? That kind of thing. So it all depends on the XG and how much you want to trust in it. That we do, obviously, as our name indicates, we do use stats, but it's not something which we rely on to explain away games. It's something which we sometimes use, and sometimes we disagree with them. And Daniel Farker after this game said that we had everything in this game. We had possession, we had shots, we had the XG, all this, and didn't he put it on par with Man City or something like that? Okay, Daniel. But what that doesn't take into account is that when about 90% of this XG was taken, it was when there was players surrounding this player and putting pressure on them all the time. And unless you have elite players for this level in the forward areas and elite scorers, they're not going to score these sort of chances. So with ourselves, we are a newly promoted side, so we do not have the strongest attackers, and we knew we wanted more. But the players who we didn't bring in were creators more than actual goal scorers. Obviously, Harry Wilson can score goals, but he's mainly a creator. But there is obviously some things in what he said about the manager's tactics, and in this one in particular, it did, like we went on before, that if we were quicker getting the ball forward, there's potentially more room for more space for attackers shooting. Like the one moment where we had with an unpressured shot was Brendan Aaronson's chance in the first half, which he 100% should be scoring. It was the least pressured shot of the entire game. Besides
the goalkeeper.
Yeah,
honestly, I've seen a lot of people say that they think they could do better there than a professional footballer, and I don't fully disagree with them all. I think some people could have done better there.
I couldn't have. I wouldn't have even hit the goalkeeper out. It would have been about 10 yards over. I'm
yeah, but you might have poked and it might have just flown in. Who knows?
Nah, it definitely. To be fair, I wouldn't have even been there in the first place, because how fast Brendan Aronson gets to that. I do want to give him credit for that particular thing. He had to cover a lot of ground between when we won the ball and where he was for the shot. I focus on that a bit, just to give him the credit for that part of it at least. But then the finish, it's just he doesn't think. Yeah, just not enough effort, not enough power behind it. I watched it in slow motion a number of times, and when he hits it, you can see his foot sort of flap when he hits it, and it's just so tame and not even put into a decent area, just straight at the goalkeeper. If he'd gone near post, that would have been better. If he would have got put a bit further, even if he would just put his foot through it from that close, he's got a good chance of doing better than what he did. But anyway, that's not what we're talking about here. But yeah, it's XG says that we should have won this game, but I don't think it felt like that watching it. We did create a lot of chances, and that is a good thing. However, the way we created those chances didn't put us in best chance of actually scoring from those chances.
Oh yeah, gosh, Aronson's ball striking is hilariously bad for someone who plays as an attacking player in a Premier League team. Like, goodness me. There's players I can think of lower down the pyramid that are better at putting their foot through it. Let's put it that way. It's ridiculous how poor it is for someone who's a top level footballer, or supposedly a top level footballer. Yeah, on the XG numbers, they can be quite noisy sometimes. This is the reason why you should look at XG over the span of a season or a run of games rather than just one game. And in this case, it is noisy because they went ahead after how many minutes? Like 5 or 6? It's something like, I was in the first 10. I don't remember the time of the goal
It was
exactly.
about 14, I think it was.
Oh, was it that late? Okay,
Yeah.
well, still, we've been behind for most of the game. Like, you're talking a large chunk of, what, 3/4 of the game, whatever it is. So that is, most of the game that we've been behind. And we've had to come back into it. And that is what we mean by game state. And I don't know why we're still getting people in 2025 in the kind of tactics and stats community that don't think game state is important, but obviously it is. I think there's so many times when you can prove that it is. Leeds had to fight back and they had to try and create chances to score. Burnley didn't, so they sat in. They had 4 shots at home. At home team having 4 shots is crazy in the Premier League. You'd think, unless it's against a Man City. Yeah, but Burnley were playing Leeds, for goodness sake. But they won. They won the game because they were able to sit in on that 1-0, and then okay, fine. They scored a screamer for the second, and it's is what it is. But after that point, you still got the same situation. Leeds are behind, and they need to generate stuff. And they need to have some urgency to try and score. So it becomes a bit panicked. But occasionally, are going to find ways of creating some chances from that. Our best chances in this game, though, Martin, were when, and I think this is the best opportunity to do it, when we did actually go either long direct to Calvert-Lewin, or we went like with a cross that actually found him somehow. And you had the Bogle one, for example, which was a genuinely big chance. Let's be honest. You talked about how big chances were a bit, inflated maybe in this game, but that one wasn't. I think Bogle probably could do better there. He probably could score. That was a great chance. Like, Calvert-Lewin wins the header, flicks it down. Bogle meets it, nearly scores. That's a great opportunity. And I know it's not pretty, but do Leeds fans really want this season to look pretty and for us to play some nice football, or do they really want to survive and then we can build? And maybe one day, it might be in quite a few years, we might be able to play some nicer stuff with some better footballers, and be a bit more dominant. In the Championship, we were able to do that a lot last season, and quite a lot of our goals were quite nice. But we don't have that talent advantage now, so we have to play this more direct game. And that was where our best chances in this match. I haven't got the biggest chances of the game in front of me, but I wouldn't be surprised if Bogles was one of the biggest. So where they came from was when we went more direct. So we should be doing that. Sorry, I went a bit tangenty there with that question. But as a continuation of that last question from American in Leeds, Bruce on Blue Sky said, "We're doing things in games, but not getting points for it. At what point is it variance? And we'll be all right versus this is what gets you relegated, and it doesn't matter about the underlying numbers." He happens to think the former currently. So where do you stand on that one, Martin?
I think it's a bit too early to say that this is going to get us relegated, but it is certainly a concerning performance. There is definitely variance in this game. Burnley had 4 shots; they scored from 2 of them. That you can't say it's not on a single game level variance. But if it continues in this sort of vein where we aren't playing to our strengths and we're allowing players to take shots unpressured, we're allowing players to cross unpressured, it's these kind of small things that will get us relegated more than the variance, in my opinion, because mistakes are punished at Premier League level. Even a team at the lower end of the Premier League, like Burnley, can punish you when you don't put in the required effort in moments in the game. You're not really allowed to switch off at all. You've got to always put pressure on the man when he's trying to cross the ball. You've got to always put pressure on the man when he's trying to shoot. These kind of things are elementary, and the simplistic things in football that you have to do no matter what team you are. You can't just allow the best goal, some of the best keepers in this league would probably have saved that shot. They're a bit taller than what Darlow is, and they maybe would have just got enough in it to tip it onto the bar, that kind of thing. So it wasn't like it wasn't a savable shot, but even with a little bit more pressure on that, it narrows the angle more, makes things more difficult for the player, and he's put off. And there wasn't any of that in that whole play, but we'll get into the specifics on that one in the second half of the pod.
I really don't have much to add here. I just wanted to speak about goalkeeper there, actually, from what you said. Perry's a bit taller than Darlow. which is interesting. But I also think, it is a small sample size. I can't remember the exact stat. It's either Darlow's second bottom for post-shot XG in the league, or he's second bottom for the goals prevented number in the league. I can't remember which it is now. It is a small sample size, and whichever one it is, it doesn't really matter. But yeah, that's not great. And I have to say, you and I think we're correct. I really disagree with Daniel Farke's logic on goalkeepers. We talk about marginal games a lot in pre-season this season for this campaign that we've got now, and one of the marginal gains is making sure you play your best goalkeeper. And Daniel Farke said he didn't want to put Perry in because he hadn't trained with his teammates, the ones that had gone away on international duty. Well, the same applies to the outfield players that didn't train with their other players on international duty. It's the most baffling logic I've ever heard, really. But by the by. But anyway, Perry should come back in, and I'm hoping that most of the fan base do agree with that now. And I don't want people to completely speak ill of Darlow. I think he's done mostly okay. Maybe the last couple of games when he's not done quite as well, but mostly okay. And I think he's fine as a number 2, but it's clear who our number 1 is. You spend 15 million on a goalkeeper who's 27, 28 from the top tier of French football, having had a pretty good season and a half for Lyon. Probably should be playing him. You have anything to say on goalkeepers, or do you want me to move on?
I just want to say it's well too early to be speaking about post-shot XG numbers. Too early.
That's fine.
That's the main thing I want to say. Perry has played 3 games. Darlow has played the rest, so it's well too small to judge anything from that. And just on the point you said about who was I think Darlow is 4th worst in the league from post-shot XG.
Might have been a different provider then.
And yeah. number two for worst in the league is Perry.
Yeah, but that was Arsenal, and that was weird.
Yeah, I know it was. And that's what I mean. This is just me reinforcing my point about small sample size. Like you look at the numbers purely from now, and you think, "Wow, Perry's the worst in the league." But of the 3 post-shot XG Perry has faced, 2.8 of that was from Arsenal. So 0.2 is all he's had for the other 2 games.
Yeah, that's fair.
So that it's so small samples. One big result like this makes such a massive difference. Like before this game, Darlow was on, let's see, he didn't save anything, and Burnley put up 0.5, so 1.5 roughly it'll be. So that would mean before this, he was at minus 0.03.
Which is not
so one game can throw it out entirely. So stop with the small sample numbers, people.
That's fine. But I will say that Perry should still come in.
Oh no, I agree on that part. I'm just more having a bit of a general.
He's also data usage. You actually do the maths on it now. Like, what is it? It's 2 goals against Bournemouth, 2 goals against Tottenham, 2 goals against Burnley. That's 6, and then 3 against England. That's 9, and 4 against Belgium. That's 13 in 5 games that he's conceded, which is a heck of a lot, and it's not going to be great for his confidence. So I think it probably just makes sense from that perspective as well against West Ham. More of a general one then, and this may be a bit of a weird one, and some people might not like that we're talking about this, but this wasn't me that put this in, and people did ask about it on various platforms. He said, should we be worried? Should we sack Farke? Are we at that point yet? I can't remember who said this, but yeah. What do you think to that one, Martin? Because Sycross also had Sycross, he prefers to be called, he said, on a serious note, what action needs to happen for Farke to be sacked? We know where he lies with this and how he feels about it. He said, is it as simple as not winning any of the next 3, or will a lack of options in the market keep him in a job? And it's all a bit difficult, but where are you at with sacking Farke, essentially?
It's well too early, and yeah, this question was inspired in part by Sycross. Yes, I'm gonna say Sycross. Just
I prefer it as well. Sorry, Sycross.
Yeah. Andrew. So yeah, I think it's well too early for us to be thinking about managerial changes. It would, from what it would take to sack Daniel Farke, it would be a proper run of games where we looked as bad as this, where we lose and we lose comfortably. Even if we do have all the shots and the XG in the world, if it goes like 4 or 5 games in a row where we're doing this, we're losing comfortably and not showing the same character that we have done in the rest of these games so far, because we have for the majority of this season, in every game, barring Arsenal, we've been competitive.
Yeah,
we've competed. Yeah. That is the bare minimum that we have to do to stay in this league. So when the team are looking like they're done and they're not showing those sort of levels, then maybe that should be the sort of time when Farkas should be sacked. And just on the other part, but in general, should we be worried? And that's meant to be on relegation threatening. No, again. But if it continues, then that is when you start to get worried.
I think we're allowed to all be a little bit underlying worried about relegation, but we were allowed to do that from minute one of this season. Like that's obvious. Yeah. We're a newly promoted team. That's fine. But if you're asking, should we be more worried after this game? Not massively, maybe a tiny bit, but like it's so insignificant it doesn't really matter. We're not going to be the protagonist in most games. And I also think this is a factor of like home and away, which isn't helping. I'm actually quite annoyed that we've had 3 of our, I would say, easier on paper away games when we're still kind of feeling the team out, and Farker's probably working some things out himself in terms of like those long ball numbers, for example, and all of that. Maybe in time that he will feed more into that and he will want to do that more. But we've had Fulham, Wolves and Burnley, and it's like, yeah, we beat Wolves, sure, but Fulham and Burnley were 2 opportunities to really get something, and we didn't get anything in either, so that's frustrating because there aren't going to be loads and loads and loads of away games this season where you can look at it and go, yeah, get something there. It's going to be quite comfortable to get something there, perhaps. Well, not comfortable, but easier to get something there compared to other teams. So that is something to consider as well. But I'm the same as you. It's probably too soon to be talking about it, even though I really didn't like this, and I don't like that he was. I don't like that he was wanting to play the way he did. Let's put it that way. Anyway, we'll move on to the second half of the podcast in just a second.
Sorry to interrupt, just a quick one. If you're enjoying the video, be sure to like and subscribe to help us keep the content coming. And if you want even more, you can support us over on patreon.com/ASAW Patreon. You'll get bonus podcasts, exclusive articles, and access to our Discord community, all while helping us make more of the content you love. Thanks. Now let's get back to it.
Right, we'll talk about some player performances in a bit more detail now, even though we've already talked about them a little bit more, and we'll also answer some more of your questions that we've got about a few things. But let's break down the goals from an individual point of view, not a tactical point of view. The goals for Burnley, of course. How avoidable were they, and where does the fault lie, in your opinion, as in who's most culpable?
So for the first goal, there's 2 players who are culpable for me. First of all, Harrison, for just not putting a lot of pressure on. I realised he was kind of marking 2 men there, but he also wasn't, because the ball was passed immediately straight back to Walker. It's not like the other player, I don't know who it was, who passed it back to Walker. I don't know who it was, but it's not like he dallied on the ball. He passed it immediately back to Walker. It was obvious what the intention was to cross it into the box, and Harrison was about 5 yards away from him, roughly, and didn't really move that much closer to him. He could have moved closer and tightened the angle more and made it more difficult for him. And you need to do that. That's not something that we usually discredit Harrison for. He's a hard worker. He normally does put in required effort whenever he needs to. So this was I'd say probably a rare lapse on his behalf, because he is usually very, very good at possession. But in this moment, yeah, he definitely didn't do his job there. And then in the middle of the box, I've watched this through about 5 or 6 times, again on slow motion, and it's Anton Stach for me. He's the one who was the closest to Ugochukwu when he was making the run, and he just was not focused on him at all. He was ball watching. A lot of players were ball watching, but it's his man. But it's his man. He's the one who was closest to him, so he should be picking up that run. If he had picked up that run, he clears that ball without a problem. Without a problem. He's a much bigger guy than Ugochukwu. Maybe not much bigger, but he's bigger, and he would have been able to get that. But it's not like it was really high in the air. It was just at a nice height for Ugochukwu to just run into, really, and head it in.
So a really good ball. I'll give Walker that. Not one I often see from him either, but it's a really good ball.
100%, but I think a lot of players in this league, when given that much time and space to put a cross in, will be able to do a better delivery than they're normally capable of. And so that didn't happen once for us. If you look at all the times when Goodmanson was trying to put a cross into the box, he always had someone on him trying to stop that cross. Same with Bogle on the other side. They always had players who were stopping them from making that action. And Harrison didn't do enough in that moment. Neither did Stach. Who is most culpable?
Stach.
I think it's close, but I will say Stach, because if he had, you'd expect him to do better in that situation.
I think you can forgive a cross coming in, but the players in the middle then need to deal with it, and ordinarily they do. Obviously, people will point the finger at Strauch and Rodon. more so Strauch at the moment, of course, as we've been over recently, because he gets between them both. But the point is, wasn't their man to pick up. They didn't need to be proactive in that instance. If one of them does look and sees that Ogochukwu's just running into the middle and Stacks left him, maybe they might do better with it. But it would have been really harsh to say that. So I agree with you that Stack just needs to follow him. It's quite basic, really. And then Strauch and Rodon are fine in their positions because they're there to stop the crosses from those kind of angles. The line was fine. Our line was fine. It was just that Stack needed to drop and he needed to get to the player he was marking. So yeah, his ball watching, and it was poor from him. Someone that we definitely do like, but poor there. Second one then, Martin.
Second one, I've again watched this through a number of times, and I get first thing, Stack wasn't great in this one. He wasn't. He was just sort of watching the ball be passed around him and wasn't really doing a whole lot. But I think then after that point, after the ball gets played around and through him and back into the middle, there's two players who could have stepped out and met it. For me, it's on Ampadu. I think he should be the one coming out. He's the defensive midfielder. I don't know why he's in the back line to start with. Why is he in the back line? Burnley had one player.
Yeah, it made no sense.
Burnley had one player. There's no reason why he should be that far back. Why is he that far back? He isn't a centre back. I know a lot of our fans think that he should be, but
but he's not. He's absolutely not.
This is another reason why he shouldn't be. But it absolutely should have been his man. Some people are saying Strauch, and I can see the argument, but one of them has to do it, and for me, it should be Ampadu because he's the further forward player. Strauch is meant to be the one on the back line. So for me, it's to him. I think either of them could have done it, but Ampadu's a captain. He should be taking charge in that moment and forcing the moment, but he gave them well too much space. One touch, two touch, and then the shot. Most players in the league, given that much space and time to be able to line up the shot, would at least get it on target from there. And yeah, he just got made that much easier. There's more pressure on the ball. That goal doesn't get scored for me.
I think not to go all Tyler Roberts against Newcastle, from years ago, which has become stayed a bit of an ongoing meme within the admins chat, when he gave it away in their half, and then they just go all the way up the pitch and score after that, and everyone blamed Tyler Roberts. But I do think that Strauch gives it away sloppily, and I think it was under minimal pressure, and I didn't really like it. I thought for someone who we trust us in terms of his short passing being pretty snappy, pretty good, he usually passes it to players' foot that's their strong foot so that they can kind of stroll onto it. That was a poor pass. Then he also gets burned by Walker. So I don't think he covered himself in glory on either of those moments, although it's kind of difficult when you've given it away to not be able to defend that space because it's not the thing he's good at, is it? He's not good at having to turn and sprint. It's not his thing. Once he's at top speed, he's not the absolute slowest in the world, but those first sort of 10, 15 yards were enough for Walker to be completely away from him at that point. So no, that wasn't great. But then the defence does get back into shape and there are enough bodies back. So it's like people complaining about Strauch. Yeah, fair enough. I can see why you're annoyed about him giving the ball away. I think a lot of you are complaining because you just don't like him. So you find anything. And I mean, I do this with other players. I'm not going to say that I don't. You don't like a certain player. When they do anything, you just go, he's so shit. That's what the kind of thing you do. And I get that. That's fine. I don't agree that he was particularly poor other than giving it away in their half, but it's fine. But yeah, the defence does get back into shape, like you say. Why is Stack ambling around? That's the best word I could use for it. I don't know who he's picking up. He's kind of between three players. He doesn't choose one. So really didn't like that from him. And then, as you said, Ampadu, you'd think not just as captain, but as probably the best kind of, John uses the phrase, doesn't he, large space defender. He's probably our best large space defender. Like, he's good at getting into those and knowing where to be stood to block a pass or a shot or something like that. I just can't, for the life of me, understand why he's dropped where he has. He's basically formed a back three of centre-backs. Why? Unless he was in kind of last season mode when he had to play centre-back, but why would you be? It didn't make any sense. And then, like you say, if you give a player in the Premier League a time to shoot in range, they're going to hit the target, and he did. It was a really good shot. Can Darlow be blamed a little bit? Maybe. I think, like you say, a taller goalkeeper or a slightly better goalkeeper who's also taller might actually just tip that one just over. But then if you watch it back as well, and I'm sure you've seen, there's one angle of it where the ball dips and it goes just it dips at just the wrong moment when it's near his hand. So it might have been quite a difficult save, even for a good goalkeeper.
I've seen that moment. Yeah,
it might have been really difficult to react to, like move your hand slightly down to do that. I'm not sure many goalkeepers would have, because of that weird dip. It took at the wrong moment, essentially. So hard to blame him too much. I do happen to think that, you know, the second goal, Stack wasn't great. Strike wasn't great. Both of them take some blame, but Ampadu by far the most. And we'll talk about Strauch in a bit, but it just feels again like everyone's saying it's his fault for everything, when, yeah, maybe a little bit on the second, not really on the first at all. But like, come on, it is overblown, isn't it? Even though I agree with you. In fact, I'm not going to skip ahead, but we'll talk about that in a bit. We had a question from Glenn in our Discord, the great man of Glenn's lists, the famous channel in Discord, which isn't used enough. He said, other than injuries and being substituted, was there anything positive about the slithering, snaky wingers we started with yesterday? I'll go first quickly on this. I just wanted to say, a lot of people losing their minds about our wingers and how we had to revert to having Harrison and we had to have Brendan Aronson, because Dan James is only just coming back to fitness, probably wasn't able to start because he's just not done any major work probably in training in terms of his fitness. So he probably can't do anywhere near 90 minutes. And then you've got obviously no Rockefeller and William Onto out. That's 5 options in the Premier League. It's not often that 3 of them are out at once. Like, I'll say that first of all. Some people are saying, well, we didn't recruit more in the summer, or, you know, whatever. Or people talking about Largi Ramazani, and like, fair enough, we didn't do those 2. We didn't keep Ramazani, and we didn't sign another forward in the summer. Fair enough, I get you. But at the same time, how many Premier League teams are going to turn to their 4th and 5th wingers and be like, yeah, this is great, other than like a very select few? I'm talking your Man City, Liverpool, Chelsea, Newcastle, Arsenal type teams. Yeah, some of them might have good 4th and 5th options in those areas. But when you're in the bottom half, like, who is Everton's 4th and 5th wingers? Who is Fulham's 4th and 5th wingers? Who is Burnley's 4th and 5th wingers? Like, they're not going to be good. So I know it's frustrating, but I think people were talking about these 2 a little bit too much in that sense. Like, it's not going to be a case this season again, probably. It's very, very unlikely that we have to see these 2 play at the same time out wide, other than maybe a substitution's been made. But in terms of starting a game, it's probably not going to happen again. So in that sense, it's like, it's one game. It's just frustrating. And I actually said before kickoff, and I think Hobbsy agreed with me, and a few others might have agreed with me, you'd have rather that, you know, you were in this situation against Liverpool or Man City, because you're probably going to lose the game anyway. But actually, for the Burnley type games, you probably want your best 2 or 3 wingers out there. You do. It's the game where you're going to have a bit more impact. You might win the game. You're more likely to win the game, and they can be big differentials for you. So in that sense, frustrated. Anyway, you can actually answer the proper question now, and then you can come back to me, because I do have one more thing to say on this. But did they do anything decent yesterday?
Jack Harrison had some good moments, especially for Brendan Aronson's chance. He did superbly to, first of all, intercept the ball. Yeah, it was a poor pass from Jadon Anthony, and I also want to shout out Jayden Bogle for his involvement in that. He was the one who was pressuring Anthony in the first place to cause the sloppy pass, and then Harrison picked it up, carried the ball nicely, made the right decision. That is the thing which you need your wingers to do, and that is what he did. He could have shot, and to be honest, I think he probably would have made a better effort at it from that distance than what Aronson would have done. And then he laid it on a plate for Aronson. There's nothing else that Harrison could have done there. He should have had an assist, and that would have been the game.
They should have had a goal and assist, shouldn't they? That's the funny part.
Yeah, that's it. If not for that one shit moment from Aronson, that would have turned the game on its head right there. If he would have scored before going second half, I think we win that game. I think we're buoyed more, and then we end up going ahead to win it. That's how fine margins football can be sometimes. One moment like this can change things. And I do think that you need to give Harrison credit for that. He worked hard out of possession, outside of the moment for the first goal, which I've already gone over. He was largely good, although I will say that his directness wasn't great on the ball. He was good out of possession, but when we did have the ball, he wasn't the best at it. And this is the same for Aronson as well. Brendan Aronson completed one take-on in this. Ashley Barnes completed one take-on in this. Sorry, I just found that really funny when I was looking over the take-on stats, and Ashley Barnes completed the same amount of take-ons as Brendan Aronson. But anyway,
I feel sick.
And yeah, me too. And in the time when he was on the pitch, Aronson made 3 progressive carries in 65 minutes. Dan James did 7 in 25. So
I thought James was really bright. I'll be honest, he was really bright.
Yeah, James Sims had a good spell off the bench, and I think the reason why he didn't start was because Farker was using it as an emergency, and this did clarify as an emergency. But I will also say that Jack Harrison was even less direct in that respect than Aronson. He only completed 1 progressive carry in this game, so that's really not good when you've got Gabriel Goodmanson completing 7 progressive carries, and you've got him attempting 5 take-ons and succeeding with 4 of them. He literally had an 80% success rate with 5 take-ons, did Gabby. And you need your wingers to be more direct than that, and especially when you are behind in a game, you need them to be forcing the issue more. And you can say that it's not either of these 2's games, and they're not great take-on wingers. Having Noah Okafor in this one would have made a massive amount of difference, I will say. Having his directness would have really helped the team, and that is why these guys aren't the first choice wingers. And just on the thing about 4th and 5th choice wingers, was Jack Harrison not Everton's first choice or third choice, something like that?
2nd or 3rd,
yeah, last season. So this is what we mean. Jack Harrison, although we may not like him, he is still a very experienced player for this level, and a lot of teams would be happy to have him, I'd say. And yeah, I would still prefer Okafor, of course, because of that directness. But Harrison still had some good moments in this game, and he could have come out with an assist. So
yeah, Harrison, actually, I feel like defending a little bit. Like, everyone's lost their heads over both players, and I think it's because they inherently don't like the way they left the club a couple of seasons ago. Well, Harrison did for a couple of seasons in a row. And I get that. I do actually get that. But I think Harrison was okay. And I mean okay. I don't mean like great. I don't think he was fantastic. But there were moments where he was nice, not panicking, and could have shot with his right foot from the moment he passed it to Aronson. But probably was the right pass, just the wrong player to pass to. It's a bit of a shame in that sense. If it was most other players in the bit, I'd rather it was Jaden Bogle, for example, would have done probably better there.
Yes.
So yeah, that's frustrating. But yeah, I thought he was okay out of possession. Thought in possession there were some moments, but it was like he's just not dynamic enough. And what I mean by that is like not having that burst to get past someone and deliver across. Or not having that trick, obviously, to beat someone cleverly. Like, he occasionally does the odd like step over or a little body feint, but it's not the same. He's not got that explosivity that most of our other wingers have. Noncho's not even that quick, but he definitely beats players, and he's very, very good at doing so. If you ask him to, and obviously Okafor and Dan James are 2 of the quickest players, probably in the Premier League, not just in our lead squad. So they have got that obvious advantage of being able to beat players just from running when they have a bit of space to use. So yeah, do want to say that, if I was giving ratings, that I'd give Harrison like a 5, maybe a 6 at a push, but something in that region. I think he was okay. And Aronson was poor. I know that he had a few more take-ons, but like there was just so little to enjoy. And like the fact that Dan James came on the right and actually crossed the ball and looked to get past his man on a number of occasions. And I know the game state suited them at that point, but still, he was able to do so. That was really positive, and I don't even remember many Aronson crosses that he attempted at all, despite the fact that we made a lot in the game. It really wasn't any ones of quality anyway. So that was really telling for me, and I'd give him more like a 3 out of 10, to be honest, for his performance. It was really not good. And yeah, I just think it underlines he started 5 games now on the right wing. Actually 6 if you go and include the Sheffield Wednesday game, but 5 in a row in the league. It's not his position. I'm not sure he's a player that has a major position in this team because he's not really a number 8. He was okay as a number 10 in the Championship, and I mean okay, but I'm not sure. I think he's one of the poorest players in terms of the technical level in the whole squad, and it shows quite often now. So we really do need to like play some of our better players and better options in those positions, and I hope that at least 2 of the 3 wingers that we named, the other ones, are back for Friday. let's talk about Pascal Strout then. I know we've done a little bit of talk, so we don't need to give it too much detail, but Russ on Twitter did say, can we do this? Can we talk about him? Because he's come up now twice in a row in a particularly big way, but like he has come up in other games as well. I am still a bit of a loss for how overwhelming the fan base has reacted to his performances lately. Like, I'm not saying he hasn't had a bit of a dip. I do think he has. I think he's been a bit poorer in the last couple of games now for sure. But it's the amount that he's dipped and the amount that people think he's dipped that are so polar opposite and so not aligned at all. He's been a little bit poor. It's no more than that. He's not been horrific. He's not been at fault for 8, 9, 10 of our 13 league goals this season, which some people would have you believe. He's maybe been at fault directly for 1 or 2. There's been a few others. You can never, ever say that a centre-back in the bottom half, even the good ones, aren't going to occasionally be culpable for goals and aren't going to occasionally make mistakes. They're not elite footballers. They're not they're not elite as in Champions League or internationals that play at a really high level. They can't all be that. So, yeah, Strauch's probably being judged a bit too unfairly, in my opinion. It's not to say that he hasn't had moments, but I think Rodon probably had a poorer game here in some aspects of switching off and not being where he should be, and people don't talk about that. So that's what frustrates me. I just don't think the argument's fair. Having said all that, Martin, I do think that I would bring Jacobiol in for Strauch, and it's not necessarily because, well, it's two things for me. It's not necessarily a slight on Strauch at all. It's actually more of a, what you were saying, Biel's our best box defender. We've signed him for a reason. Actually use him for that reason. Obviously, some fans might say that you should play Biel with Strauch, and I'm not against that, but then you'd have a lot less speed, which might be an issue in some games or some game states. So Rodon does make some more sense for that. And then, yeah, the last factor is I'm kind of sick of the narrative. I'm kind of sick of seeing it online. I'm kind of sick of seeing people talk about Strauch. I'm kind of sick of the fact that he's the one getting more blame than any other player in the team, and it's completely not fair and imbalanced based on where you could actually point the finger and portion blame. It's not been portioned around completely fairly at all. So I'm just sick of that, and I don't particularly want to see it on my timeline anymore. So just for his sake, as much as anything else, get him out of the team, sideline him, and then no one has to talk about him. And if Biel's rubbish, then they can all go, well, our centre-backs are rubbish then, and that's fine. I prefer that, to be honest. I prefer you were saying they're all rubbish than saying Strauch's rubbish all the time. So for me, it's that last factor. It's like, just don't want to see it anymore. So bring Biel in, and that's where I stand. But I still don't think this was fair at all, the way he's been judged online. I don't know about you.
I 100% agree. And in fact, I thought he was largely good in this game.
Yeah, considering we had to play a short passing game, he was probably one of the, I talked about horses for courses and needing players. Strauch's actually one of the ones you want if you're going to actually do that. Of course he is. Him and Tanaka are two of the players you want for that.
Yeah, sorry, I'll cut out there for a minute. What was the last thing you said? I'll go from there.
I just said, of course, he'd suit this sort of game, this sort of team. If we're playing short, if that's the plan, him and Tanaka are two of the players that would suit that. And so it actually made sense the way we were playing. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Then this is the way that Farke wanted to play in this game. Farke wanted to play in this exact way. Otherwise, he would have told them to do things differently. At half time, he would have said, get it more long, get the balls up to Calvert-Lewin, but he didn't. And in this game, Pascal had the highest pass completion in the side. He attempted 101 passes and completed 92 of them. And he also got 12 completed passes into the final third. That was again the most on the pitch. So he was asked with keeping the ball moving around, passing it strong. Yeah, that pass for their second goal, that wasn't that great, but most of the rest of his passes were good. So this is the thing, that he's not going to be perfect every single moment. No player is, but especially not for a team at the bottom end. And the reaction to Strauch is always going to be like this. You're always going to have the people who hate him, who say he's the bane of everything Leeds United, and you're always going to have people like us who defend him. But even we can point out when he has done something bad, and he did. for that second goal, and he had a small part to play in that. A lot of things have to happen after he conceded the ball, of course, but he still did play a poor pass, and we can acknowledge, yes, he played a poor pass, but one or two poor passes in a whole 90 minutes does not mean that a player is terrible. Just if that is the case, let's talk about some of the other players on here. Let's see, 72% for Harrison, 77% for Jaden Bogle. If you judge him on his misplaced passes, when he is trying to get the ball into final third, and he did do 13 times, and I'm not quite sure people really understand how close that is. The final third is literally around the box.
Mm-hmm.
So it passes around the box, either inside the box or just outside of it, and to the sides, of course. But yeah, it's one of those things. It's always going to be this way with Pascal, and I do agree that I would like to see Biol in. That isn't because Pascal has been bad. That is just because I want to see what Yako is all about. I want to see him play in the Premier League. We have 3 centre-backs who are all of similar quality, but I would say Biol is the best out of the 3. And I want to see him. We've paid money for him. I want to see him. Just put him in the side. He's our best box defender. And if that means that I see less of Pascal, that's okay. I think that he is a better box defender than what Pascal is. Is he a better passer of the ball? No.
No, but I will caveat that and say that he's a pretty good long passer, and was something we picked up in the scouting pods and the analysis articles we did on him at the time, Dan in particular, and a few other people, including Tom Wilson, who we absolutely love and hope he's doing well. He's good at those kind of passes. And I'm not saying that Strauch's not a better ball-playing centre-back. He's the best ball-playing centre-back at the club. Of course he is. But Biel's really good at those kind of raking, either straight up to Calvert-Lewin or out to a winger passes that maybe Strauch's not quite as good at because he doesn't need to do them as much. So that would be another benefit too.
Yeah, exactly. So it's fine. They can all play equal minutes. Strauch can have some games out, and Biol can play in a certain game. And just you don't have to use the same centre back pairing for every single game. Yeah, it's nice when you can build up some fluidity between your centre backs. They need to understand each other. But when you're going this long without putting him in the game, even later in the game, like when we are ahead, or if we need to consolidate, bring him in just for something extra in defending, that kind of thing. But he's got no understanding on the actual pitch between either of the two potential centre back pairings that are out there. So we just need to be playing Biol more. That's my main take home. It's not because I want to see less of Strauch.
He's also gorgeous.
We want to see more of him. Yeah, exactly. And I think that's another thing which puts people off by Strauch, is because he is so gorgeous.
Yeah, I think if you're a sexy playmaking midfielder, you can get away with those good looks. But when you're a centre back, people want you to be a bit of a brutish thug, and you want to look like it as well.
Yeah, exactly. So I think that's why that, as much as I love Rodon, the people take to Rodon a lot better, because he does look the part of a brutish guy. I'm not saying he's bad looking. He's just
always looks on the verge of moaning. Or
yeah, exactly. or crying. He always look like he's about to burst into tears in anger, like that that angry crying, that kind of thing. He's a very emotional looking player. But
I'm worried about him this season, because I do think I made a prediction to a few people at the start of the season that he'll get a sending off at some point, and he did get a little bit involved on Saturday at one point. I was just like, don't do it, mate. We don't want you getting sent off. As much as that will get Biel in the team, we just don't want that yet. So please.
Was that when Hannibal came on?
Yeah, it might well have been. We don't need to talk about him. There's enough going on with that.
I don't want to say the words about that man. I feel
we might get in some legal trouble if we're not careful. So let's be
exactly.
Careful. He's going through some stuff at the moment. I'm sure people have seen. Let's talk about midfield for a sec, and then we'll probably finish off with the last tiny bit. Midfield is what I want to talk about next, because we've already talked about the fact that Tanaka would have made a difference in this game as a profile. But Will N in the Discord, or Sleepy Joel as he's known, it said, if we'd have signed a 10 in the summer like we wanted with a Buonanotte type, would he have played in that game? Would it have changed how we set up? I actually didn't want to answer it just for this game. I wanted to answer it for the kind of season as a whole. I have on good authority that we might have done a 4-2-3-1 still, but we've done a 4-3-3. That's fine. It would have been nice to have seen a 4-2-3-1 in some games, or at least have the option to do it. And if that had been the case, I think we'd have played a double pivot of a certain Mr. Anton Stack, who probably would have suited that role more because he's done defensive midfield role more in his career, next to one of either Sean Longstaff or Ethan Ampadu. Again, that might have been a kind of horses for causes type situation. I don't really know. But basically, I think that was within the plan at one point, but ended up going with a 4-3-3. That's what we ended up settling on in pre-season, and that's what we stuck with. I don't think that role of basically Ampadu at the base, Longstaff as the centre mid, box to box, and Stack's the other one, box to box, where basically you're asking Stack to be I've used the word protagonist a lot on this podcast, but I'm going to go with it again, the most protagonistic of the midfielders, kind of the most progressive of the midfielders, kind of the not, I don't want to use the word playmaker because he's not the number 10, but like the one that's probably going to use the ball the most to get it forward into those areas, more than the other two. And if you're asking him to do that, I don't think that suits him with Longstaff. So actually, the game that we looked the most balanced when we did have a lot of the ball was Everton. We had Tanaka, and it meant that kind of Stack was the second most important midfielder of that trio in terms of kind of progression in the final third or towards the final third. I'm not on about what Ampadu does in build-up because he does a lot of good things in build-up, and you've put out some stuff recently on that as well. But I'm talking about when you get kind of past the halfway line. I don't think that's Stack's game at all, and I think it's kind of unfair how he's being judged at the moment. I seem to be defending a lot of our favourites here, aren't I? Strauch and Stack. But I think he's been, he's poor. He was poor yesterday. Of course he was. But I don't think it's completely fair because of what I've just said. Like he isn't a player that suits having to basically take the ball under pressure and to play passes out and spread it out to the wings and combine, essentially, is the word I'm looking for here, whereas Tanaka is. So when he's there with Longstaff, it can work. But for what we said earlier about long balls, working off the scraps, working off the 50-50s, the second balls, feeding off that. He's really good at that. Longstaff's really good at that. And that's why we should be feeding into that. That's why we should be going for those counter-pressing moments, but we're not at the moment. When we're having to actually progress the ball, it's not his game. So I think in terms of midfield profiles, I'm kind of frustrated because I don't think that Longstaff and Stack are being judged as fairly as they could be in a game like this. This is just not their game. You need one of them. You don't need both. And if you're going to play one, you play Stack because he's at least a little bit better than Longstaff in possession. So yeah, that's why I was annoyed. I think if you go for the game plan that we've discussed and that we've seen this season, we have seen, then actually those two could have looked a whole lot better in this game. I think that could have suited them, and actually people could have been looking at them going, yeah, they've been really good again because they're doing the thing they're good at. They're winning those second duels, and that's what you need them to do. So that's where I stand. I don't know if you wanted to answer the original question or talk around what I've just said, but go for it. Just say whatever you want.
Well, I do feel that if the plan was to be as we was in this game, play it short, trying to be patient, why wouldn't you play out Tanaka? I don't get it. You played Brendan Aronson, and he's done the exact same thing that Tanaka did, and which was fly around the world, play a little bit of football, but not really a whole lot, and then come back and have a day's training maybe. If you're happy to play Brendan Aronson in this game, why wouldn't you be happy to play out Tanaka?
Yeah.
I think that we would have been fine in this game and we would have still won the midfield battle with Tanaka in there. We didn't need both Stack and Longstaff in those forward areas. You could have had Tanaka be the most further forward of those. You could have even played him as a 10 if you want to, and then have Stack and Ampadu or Ampadu and Stack, whichever combination of those three players you want.
Yeah.
So two players that you want behind, and have him being a player he's probably the most, I wouldn't say he's creative, but he can find passes.
Yeah, he can shred them. Yeah, definitely.
You remember those crosses that he would do from like the right half space? The sort of trend.
Oh man, I love him, man. I miss him.
Sort of whipped sort of balls, those kind of ones. Those are the kind of things which I think Calvert-Lewin would love. He would love those sort of passes, and that was a similar sort of thing that with Jaden Bogle's cross to him. I know he got a deflection, but it'd be that sort of movement, whipping it in from that sort of area. And I don't think Longstaff can do that. I don't really think Stack can do that. So yeah, if you want to be more ball dominant, play your best ball dominant midfielder. I mean, it kind of makes sense. But if you're not going to want to be ball dominant and you want to have that high advantage and you want to play more direct and get the second balls going, then of course you want Stack and you want Longstaff on there.
Yeah.
But it just doesn't really match up. Farke doesn't like changing things unless he really has to, and it's biting us on the arse already.
Yeah.
And that isn't me saying that I want Daniel Farke gone. He just needs to learn some lessons and
100%.
and do this before it really starts getting in trouble, because the person who's going to pay for it is him. He's going to lose his job, and then that would be him failing at the Premier League for a third time with much more of a transfer spend and a better squad behind him. So yeah, he needs to make better choices in these sort of moments. And if you don't start Tanaka, fair enough. Bring him on at half time.
Yes, I said it to my brother.
You're allowed to do it.
Yeah.
You're allowed to do it. Why won't you do it? We clearly needed something extra, and that Tanaka could potentially have been that extra. Bringing him on in the 80th minute or whenever he did, that's not going to be good to anyone. That's useless. That's just forcing it well too late, and you're leaving yourself 10, 15 minutes for him to do something. Let him get a feel for the game, bring him in at half time. And then as the half wears on, he could find that moment.
100%.
So yeah, that's my take on.
Yeah, just one last point on that is you were talking about the crossing earlier and how essentially every time that Goodmanson tried to make a delivery happen, he was under a lot of pressure. We barely ever got to the byline to actually deliver balls. You didn't notice, like, a lot of them came from like slightly deeper angles, and so that's just another reason to play Tanaka. If the ball we weren't able to get crossing opportunities from that kind of like right towards the byline, getting down the line properly, then yeah, play them in those half spaces, that corner of the box, and he's good at those. So he could have been, combining with players like Bogle in those areas, and probably would have got a couple of deliveries off that might have been really good. And also, it's not just Calvert-Lewin that would benefit from them when he's back. Rockford would. Yes. He'd love those kind of curved balls in behind. If there's a space open, he'll run into it, and it might get found from someone like Tanaka. And I'm not sure anyone else in our midfield has the kind of capabilities to play that pass. So another reason why there are some games where Tanaka makes sense, others where it doesn't make as much sense. And it just depends on, like we said earlier, it's about having the right profiles for the right tactics. This was the right profiles for the wrong tactic. Pick one or the other. Don't do a mixture.
Like, if you look at Burnley's midfield, it would have matched up with ours if we'd played Tanaka. Because they've got Cullen, who's a bit smaller, tenacious, more progressive, and then you've got the other two who are the bigger guys. Exactly. So we would have been able to match up fine, and we wouldn't have lost a midfield battle because of him being in there. It would have been fine. So yeah.
Just don't understand it. Obviously, the worst combination would be going for the wrong profiles and the wrong tactics, but he's not done that. So he just did a mixture of each. That was the problem. So yeah, anyone struggle? Particularly, we've already kind of covered. I think Stack was probably our worst player here. Aronson probably the other one. My colleague gave him a 1 out of 10 on his player ratings, which I thought was a bit harsh. I don't think you can give a 1 without a red card or an own goal or something of that ilk. But he was pretty poor. He probably like a 3 or 4 out of 10. Quite a few of them were probably 3, 4, 5s out of 10s. I don't really want to single anyone out, to be honest, mine, so we can skip over that and we can just talk about who actually we thought was pretty good man match nominees, if there are any. I think there were a couple. I like Dan James's cameo. I've already mentioned that. I'm not going to go into that in more detail. And both on watching and on the watch bet, I thought our player that looked the most up for the game was Gabriel Goodmanson. I'm sure you're probably going to agree. It looked like the one that was actually going to make something happen. It didn't quite come off for him. And like caught upfield a little bit on the second goal, but that's not his fault. He was in a good position. It's just the wrong pass. But in the main, that was pretty good. It's just the odd sloppy touch here and there. There were quite a few of those. I don't know if the pitch was a bit bouncy or slick, too slick. Maybe that was a plan as well. It was a bit too wet, perhaps, because Stack and Goodmanson and a couple of others, and Purdue, just like bouncing off them. I don't really know why. So that was frustrating. But I thought he was still probably the best player that started the match. There weren't that many others. You're going to name one. I know you're going to name one. So I'll leave that to you. But I'd give Goodmanson my man of the match. I think I thought he was solid enough.
Yeah, I'd agree. Goodmanson will be my man of the match as well. I just loved how he drove with the ball. That was one of the things which I loved most about him in this game. And just he was probably the most direct of our players, and he was looking to make things happen, trying to get to the byline, getting balls in. And the stats back that up. I looked over the stats after I'd done the rewatch, and he had the most expected assisted goals, more than double the closest person
That's
to
really
him.
good. Yeah.
Yeah, like 0.9 is a lot for one individual to make in one game. The closest to him was Calvert-Lewin with 0.4, which
Was
is
it
just
how
mad.
much of that, if you can see, was the Metcha chance, which I thought he should have probably buried, to be honest?
Let's see. The Metcha chance was 0.69.
Yeah, probably a
So
big chunk of it to that. Yeah.
good chunk of it. So yeah, that was a big chance which he created, and like I said earlier, he completed the most take-ons. He had the most shot-creating actions. He had the most progressive carries. He was just doing everything he could to get us down that left channel. And two other guys I want to mention. On the right side, I thought Bogle had another pretty strong performance. He wasn't the best on the pitch. He wasn't quite doing as well as what Goodmanson had, but he wasn't facing up against Kyle Walker, and I think that helped Goodmanson in that respect. I think he had the beating of Walker in a physical battle, and I don't think that was quite the same with the other side, because Bogle had Hartman to deal with most of the time when he was defending. He was mainly wide, with Aronson being a little bit narrower. So and Hartman's a bit quicker, so it was a bit more difficult for him to get by his man. But then another guy is Joe Roden. I thought he was really trying a lot to get the ball forward, and he was doing some nice ball carries. I noticed, especially going into the second half. And again, the stats back that up. He had quite a lot of carrying distance in this one. Let's build it up. I saw it earlier. 322 yards of carrying in this game. Progressive carries, that is. And just so you know what that means, progressive carries where a player move the ball while controlling with their feet towards the opposition goal. So it's basically in the direction of the goal, carrying it forward. So he carried it so far and was doing a lot in that respect. And I don't think he put a foot wrong, really, outside of that. And I thought he was good, and hasn't put a foot wrong a lot of times this season. He's been really taken to Premier League well, I felt, and I'm quite.
Yeah, but I
quite
feel
happy
the
for him.
same about Strauch, and I know you do too, for most
Oh
part.
yeah, I do. It's just it surprised me more with Roden. I thought he was going to struggle a little bit,
He's a bit more rash.
Yeah,
more
I
aggressive.
thought he was going to make more mistakes, and he hasn't. He's generally been pretty level-headed outside some moments when we've been losing late in games, but he's generally been really good and not been giving away stupid yellow cards often. And he's really he's. I don't know if he did it in this one, but yeah, he's taken to Premier League life really well. I know that it's really weird to say that he's been doing really well, but he has. So yeah, I just want to give me flowers.
Just one last thing, and then we'll sign off. Jayden Bogle, probably our player of the season so far. I think there's been. I don't think he's probably got man of the match in any game other than maybe the Sheffield Wednesday Cup game, which doesn't really count. But he's probably been in the top 3 or 4 performers for nearly every game, and so he's probably been the most consistent player of anyone. And you talk about people taking to life in the Premier League. Well, he certainly has. You and I both. Without speaking about it, we both found his stats for the season recently, and we didn't message each other and say, oh, have you seen this? We both found it separately. He's put up some brilliant numbers. I don't know what they're up to date now after the Burnley game, but he's one of the most for tackles and interceptions. I think he's the most for tackles and interceptions in the team, which is really good. His defensive numbers are kind of popping more than I thought they would. That's the area that people were probably more worried about. And actually, he's been kind of one of our better defensive players in terms of the actual getting through work, in terms of defensive duels and tackles, interceptions and recoveries and all those kinds of things. He ranks really well in most categories. So I'm very, very pleased with how he's done so far, and hats off to him. We are almost a quarter of the way through now, which feels crazy to say. One more game, it'll be basically a quarter. He'd be my player of the season at the quarter mark, I think.
Yeah, I've got those stats, by the way, that you've been speaking about. So he's joint 5th in the league for dribblers tackled with 13. And of the players who are ahead of him, I think only one of them is a fullback. Tyrick Mitchell is the only one on there.
Wing back, but yeah.
All the rest of them are generally midfielders or one centre-back in Elliott. But yeah, then for interceptions, he's again joint 5th for interceptions with 12 so far. And there isn't a winger who has more than him. There's Reece James, who has the same amount, but there's no fullback who has more than him. And then the other one was, where's it gone? I think it was just tackles in general, I think.
He's the most in our team, I know that.
Yeah, I think he's just dropped out of the tackles 1 top 10, but he was in it before this game, so he'll be just outside it. I can't see that
Really good though.
diving into it, but yeah, he's really good, and he's putting in a very top performance. And I also want to shout out Anton Stark. I've just noticed his name here. He's got the 9th highest dribblers tackled success rate. 85%
this is
of dribbles
you
he's
can't
tackling.
really. I know it was poor on both goals, to some capacity in this game, but like most of the time, like in the midfield areas anyway, you can't really fault his work in that kind of around the halfway line. He's absolutely top. Like he's so good, and it's one of the reasons I wanted to sign him when I named that he was going to be one of my players was more for this kind of work. Like as a number 6, as a defensive midfielder, this is what he's good at. He's playing it slightly out of position, and people are slightly unfairly judging him because he's having to do too much work when we are the team that are being more ball dominant. That's not really fully his game, so it's not quite hitting the levels that we know he can reach. But is it actually any surprise that 2 of our best performances this season, 2 of our wins, the only 2 wins we've got, Everton and Wolves, he's probably the man of the match in both games? I don't think it is. I think he's really important to us. So people saying to drop him for Tanaka, no. No, not yet. He'd have to look quite poor for a while for me to do that, and for Barker to do that, I think, as well.
And also, one final thing on him, just the visual that we put out on it, he's hanging with some of the best players at the moment in the league in terms of midfielders who progress the ball and create shots. He's in some very good company. If you haven't seen that
it's
visual,
weird because it's not really his game, but he's still doing it mostly okay. It's just that there are some shonky passes. There are some like, what is your touch doing there? Like moments you do see it when the eye test. If you look past the stats, and I get that. I'm agreeing with people that say that, but I just think that again, the attacks on him have been a bit overblown, and he doesn't need to come out of the team. Let's put it that way. It would be Longstaff for me because he's a little bit weaker overall as a player. Even though he's a good player, he's been good. I still think it would be Tanaka if we needed to do that for certain games. Anyway, we will sign off now. Where can they find a Patreon, Martin?
Patreon.com/ASAW Patreon.
Don't forget to like and subscribe on YouTube and everything else. It really helps us out. As we say, that's all we have time for tonight. There will be a preview of West Ham with Dan and Martin on Tuesday, which should be in your players by Wednesday. Not a lot of turnaround for that for Friday. Fortunately, which I'm sure you might mention on the preview, West Ham play on Monday, so their turnaround is only 4 days, and we've got 6 days, which is a nice little advantage that we've got there. But that's all it was time for tonight. As I say, so thank you very much to Martin, as always.
Thank you as well, Adam.
And to you, dear listeners, for listening to this therapy session. It was as good as I hoped it was. And yeah, we'll see you very soon with that preview. And then we'll review West Ham. And then I can't remember who's after that. Is it Forest? Is it Brighton? Anyway,
Brighton,
it doesn't matter.
But yeah,
something like that. We've got some games, some big games still on the horizon. But try and enjoy your week, guys. Thank you. Bye.